Hey everyone, welcome back to TV Guys, the show that kills more brain cells than living in an election year. I'm Matt,
I'm Brian.
I'm Brandon.
and today we are talking about Lovable Oafs, and so because of that, we brought in our own favorite Lovable Oaf, Brandon Temmel. You admit it, you guys were just waiting, like all of you had, who am I gonna say as a Lovable Oaf in this podcast? Admit it, you all had that joke.
Oh, I have a couple I'm still gonna do, but
okay.
Yeah.
You don't get to take this from me. So anyone who has been listening to our podcast and you're like, who is this Brandon guy? We have never had him on the podcast before, but we love Brandon. Brandon's been with us for a long time. He was in the great Kairos and Jeremy movies that we did back a million years ago for Ethel Youth, and had a lot of fun with that. And he peaked in his acting ability then, and it's all been downhill from there.
Which surprisingly, these movies have come up several times on our podcast, and we just had Dan on, so it's like it's the reunion.
We're doing a reunion tour here. It's great.
But I think is it only the three of us who were in both of them?
I feel like Paul wasn't in.
No, he wasn't in Kairos.
No, who else? Now I'll have to think. I thought there was more overlap, but maybe there wasn't.
Because Kairos had a smaller cast than Jeremy, so you just think who was in Kairos.
It had a smaller main cast, but there was still like a good amount of we need students and background and etc.
Which, by the way, Brandon, I'm on a mission. I can't find Jeremy anywhere. I don't have a copy of it. I thought it was on Vimeo at one point, but I went on a deep search. I couldn't find it. So I found Kairos is on my Facebook, but I can't find Jeremy anywhere.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a copy to help you.
It's been lost to time, which might be a good thing. I don't know.
That was the better of the two, I think.
It was 100%. I have to say, like, one of my favorite parts of we're already way off track. One of my favorite parts of Jeremy that shouldn't have ever made it in there was when I'm talking with Brandon's character, because I'm Jesus and talking to him, and I say something like, I need you to do this, and then that was like the end of the scene, and then because I'm the director, I didn't call cut, so we're just kind of sitting there in character, and then I go, or I'll kill you. And somehow that made it into the final product. And so Jesus threatening a teenager actually existed in this movie, and that was canon. So
I like to think that Jesus has a sense of humor. I don't know.
Well, there's also a scene where you're reading the Da Vinci Code and laughing.
That one was 100% intentional to leave in. That was fine. This one was like, that should have been a blooper, but oh well. Anyway.
I think one more thing. I think the craziest thing with Kairos was that, I think I mentioned this before, it's like a serious moment where like the police chief is telling you that your wife died, and the police chief is played by Brandon's cousin, who was like 14 at the time.
Yes. And she was also in Jeremy. There we go. There's another one. She was. She was like kind of ditzy friend of the group.
Okay. I don't remember her being in that.
Like Sam kept making fun of her every time that she'd like say lines.
I thought that was Alyssa.
Yeah, wasn't she? Oh, it was Morgan who was okay. Yes. I was getting confused. In my mind I had Alyssa as the chief, but it wasn't.
Nope, it was Morgan.
All right. Yes, you're right. Anyway, now back to our regularly scheduled programming. So Brandon, what are some shows that you really like to kind of give us a feel for your TV palette?
Well, I mean, I got to go with the classic, tried and true. I'm a huge Office fan. Lost track how many times I've watched that. But I also just finished rewatching Star Trek Next Generation with my wife, and it was her first watch through, so that was pretty exciting. She really liked it. And I haven't seen it since...
I finished second season last week.
Man, I thought I remembered not caring for the first and second season that much, but they were way stronger than I remembered. So
second for sure, yeah.
Yeah, there's some campiness and some issues for sure, but yeah, the whole series was much better than I remembered, and so that was nice to rewatch and go through that again. I guess I'd also say I was shocked at how good Cobra Kai was.
Yeah.
Couldn't believe how strong of a story that was. So that's a more recent show that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to like Cobra Kai, but I liked it a lot.
Same here. I didn't know what I was gonna expect with it. I had like hopes because I heard really good things about it. So I'm like, I think this should be good, and it was. It kind of even surprised me, even with the good reviews. So yeah. I love it when a show does that.
Yeah, I suppose I should also throw in Mr. Robot because that's a fantastic TV show as well.
Yeah, it is.
That's another Damon Lindelof show, right?
I think Sam Esmail.
Yeah. Yeah, he was the big guy behind it. Rami Malek just does so good in it. And like Mr. Robot is pretty much like Fight Club, the TV show to me. I was watching, I'm like, I just get these Fight Club. It's so Gen X-y and so very much like anti-establishment, like chaos, anarchy type. I'm like, yeah, they are very influenced by Fight Club.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump into the show title here. We're talking about Lovable Oafs, and that kind of speaks to like it's pretty obvious, but just to kind of to lay the ground here, we're going to talk about what some of our favorite Lovable Oafs in all of TV are. There's a lot of really good characters, and this is a character type that seems to pop up a lot. And I think part of it is it's an easy character to write, but the more that the show goes on, it seems to be like the more dumb these characters end up getting. So you start like a character as a lovable oaf in season 1, and by like season 7 it's like they have 5 brain cells that they're trying to rub together to create a spark. So
and we should define what we mean by that. It's like the lovable character, they usually like sweet and caring and all that, but their trait is that they're very dumb.
Yeah, that's usually the partnering that it goes with, because there's a lot of dumb characters, but 9 times out of 10 they end up making sure that character has a lot of heart to compensate for the lack of brains.
Yes.
So we'll kind of do a little bit of like a top 3 format, but then I have definitely more than 3, so I'm sure we'll probably bring up a couple others too that are great additions and worthy to talk about. Brandon, since you're our guest, you can go first if you want with your number 3.
All right, my number 3. All right. I guess I'm gonna have to go with Cosmo Kramer, Seinfeld.
Nice.
He just, what a goofball. I put down some of my favorite things that he's done, or just a couple things. Like he finds the set of the Marv Griffin show and recreates it in his apartment. And then he does the show to nobody, and he takes commercial breaks and like shoves chips in his face, drinks Coke, and all right, we're back. Just, the kind of thing that only a character like Kramer could pull off.
Kramer's one of those characters you can throw anything at him and it doesn't seem weird coming from him.
Yeah. And there's so much of Michael Richards in Kramer too. Like he puts a lot of his comedy styling into that, and so it feels very a natural extension of him. And he just he has that body language, the way he does things. He has just a great temper. I love the one episode where he is acting out diseases to get some extra money, and so he gets gonorrhea, and so he makes this whole production out of it, and the hospital loved it so much. He's the reason acting out diseases for medical students, for them to guess what they're afflicted with, and so they loved it so much. The next time he comes in, they give him gonorrhea again, and he hates that he keeps getting gonorrhea, so then he steals someone else's disease, and they're like, wait, that was mine.
Yes. Yeah. There was also, I think one of my favorite pieces of dialogue with him was his exchange with Jerry about write-offs, which is just a quick little snippet where he's telling Jerry, it's fine, it's a write-off. And Jerry's like, do you even know what a write-off is? No, but they do, and they're the ones writing it off.
That's a pretty good Kramer.
I appreciate the Seinfeld representation, because between Brian and myself, we don't talk too much about it, but it's a legendary show. It deserves some mention.
It's one of the shows that I never watched as much because it wasn't on as much, and I haven't gone back and rewatched it. So I know it kind of more tangentially, but I don't have enough references. But I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah,
agreed. All right, I'll jump in with my number three. I was saying to you guys beforehand, I really like to have dark horse picks, and he might not actually be a number three because there's some other ones that are like really, really good, but I know we're gonna get to them, so I'm gonna guess that my number 1, 2, or 3 would have been taken. Yeah. So here he's subbing in is Space Ghost from Space Ghost Coast to Coast.
Oh, that's a great pick. I've been rewatching some of that show, and it is like, I think they were just counting on their audience being stoned.
I mean, that's a very fair assessment. I love Space Ghost because he's like this charismatic talk show host, but he is dumb as rocks, and so he's surrounded by the villains from his show that they're helping like keep the show running and putting on, and like they have no respect, complete disdain for him, and like he just whenever he needs to get him in line, the only like last resort he has is like blast Zorak with his like laser, and that's all that he can do to keep any sort of order because he has zero brains. And so it's really fun to see him handle the responses of these guests, because for those who don't know how they do like the Space Ghost Coast to Coast interviews, they have these celebrity guests and they talk to them for like 30 minutes, but then they use the responses and they craft a script around it. And so Space Ghost is asking different questions, or Moltar and Zorak are saying different things. So they work backwards to have Space Ghost ask the dumbest things possible to get these responses, and then just harp on that. And it's really fun. It works really well, in my opinion, and Space Ghost holds it all together.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those shows where if you can't be doing something else and watch that show, because you're like, what are they even talking about? Like, because even watching it doesn't make any sense, but just the performance of it, I can't describe it. It just is top notch.
My favorite guest that they ever had was when they had David Cross and Bob Odenkirk on. And I will never forget, like, when they introduced Bob, he's like, "Oh, I thought you said my name was Bob Odenkirk." And so then like, he does this whole bit about his, and then Space Ghost calls him Ba for the rest of the episode.
It's so random. They had one when they were interviewing the cast of Gilligan's Island, like all the living cast of Gilligan's Island at the time. And it wasn't like, I mean, the show was what, 90s? So that show was already 30 years old at the time.
They had a dog on. They like had a dog and they interviewed the dog. I don't remember which dog it was from like Lassie or something like that. And they didn't like give it lines. It just would bark. And so he'd ask questions, the dog would bark. And like, what is this?
Brandon, have you ever seen the show?
Idea.
So, Brandon, have you ever seen the show?
I have not, but you guys are kind of selling me on it.
If you have HBO Max, yeah, go check it out.
Okay.
There you go.
All right.
Making a note.
I'm going to go.
Brian, what you got?
All right. I'm going to go. I picked that you guys probably have. I'm going to go with Andy from Parks and Rec.
Yeah,
great. The great Chris Pratt.
Yep.
And they kind of give him a little bit of a heel turn. So in the first season, the first couple episodes, he really wasn't the lovable oaf. He was kind of more, not exactly like Roy from The Office, but that's kind of like the mold that they were giving him.
Yeah.
And then they switched him, and especially when they started having him with April, and just everything he says. Like there's that whole monologue where he says to Ron, "I'm going to give you all of my secrets." And then,
yep.
It's like when they say what 2% milk, I don't know what the other 98% is. One time I threw a beer can at a swan and it attacked my niece Rebecca, and it's just.
I never sold my last 3 cars. I just forgot where I parked them.
Yep. The best one that I guess was an improvisation where he says, "Leslie, I typed your symptoms into the thing up here, and it says you might have network connectivity problems."
That's my favorite Andy line.
Yep.
I also like his, Leslie, I tried making ramen in a coffee pot and I broke everything.
Yeah.
And he's a character that once they made that switch with him, it was steady. Like you always knew what you're going to get with Andy, and so they didn't have. I mean, they had storylines with him, but they didn't really have really big character development with him, outside of him just kind of finding his place. But he kept his optimism and everything like that.
Really good Andy moment to give you a nice fullness of his character is when he and April have to go to Bed Bath and Beyond to buy things, like because of being roommates with Ben and having to grow up, and so like they keep wanting to buy all of these like kitty stuff.
It was the SCTV on TV stuff.
Yeah, and so eventually he has to like stop himself and April because they're running away with it. It's like, no, we're adults. We got to buy these things. We need to do this. He's like, but if you think for 1 second, I'm not going to let you also buy this marshmallow gun and pelt me with marshmallows. like it was nice that he had that hand in hand sort of thing. It's like, yeah, I know I need to grow up and we need to have this together, but I'm not going to lose that part of me.
Yeah. And then later on, when Chris Pratt lost all the weight for being Star-Lord, I love the line where they said, "Can you believe I lost all this weight just by not drinking beer?"
Wow, how much beer were you drinking? I know, right?
Probably too much. Yes. I love the line. I can't remember who he's talking to. I think it was Leslie, and she's telling him, "Hey, remind me to tell Ben this thing later." And he's like, tell Ben something. And his notice just like, okay, yep, that'll help.
Because then April was right there. He was like, "I'll remind him."
Yes.
Like Andy's the guy you can count to be there for you, but you can't depend on him if it's anything technical.
Yes.
Like he'll try, but he won't succeed.
he'll try, and it might make things worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's very similar to another character that we might talk about in a couple minutes. So
yeah.
Brandon, what do you got for number 2?
Well, Andy was my number 2. So I'll go with should I pick one of my honorable mentions or take my number 1?
Go with the honorable mention. Bump
okay.
him up.
This is another kind of curveball. It's Norm Macdonald, both the person and every character he's ever played.
what was his show called? That it was
called Norm. I think it was just Norm.
Was it just called
I
Norm?
thought it was just Norm. Yeah.
Yeah. Norm Macdonald. I mean, yeah, you could go with all of his TV shows, all of his stand-up, all of his late night appearances. Like on a late night, there's the moth joke that he did with Conan. That's just a 5-minute joke for a stupid punchline to get people to forget what the setup was. Just telling this dramatization. Like, it's so good. If you haven't seen it, you have to go on YouTube, spend the 5 minutes on the moth joke. One of my favorite is not from a TV show, but from the movie The Animal. There's a scene with a mob, and Norm Macdonald's just one of the guys in the mob, and they're about to go after this guy, and he goes, hey, wait, I got a question. Can we light our torches now, or do we have to wait until it gets dark? And the guy's like, well, wait till it gets dark. It's like, okay. Hey, wait, I got another question. Suppose we had already lit our torch. Is it cool if we just leave it lit? And he pulls out his lit torch. He's like, yeah, it's fine. Okay. Hey, wait, I got another question. If one part of the mob gets separated from another part of the mob, should we have a place, maybe a secret place, where the mob can get together and we can be a big mob again? Like, stay with mob. Okay, stick with mob. Got it. Hey, doesn't this guy deserve a fair trial?
Norm is so funny. I love the risks that he took in comedy. I think it was the roast of Bob Saget.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was one of the roasts. I couldn't remember which one it was.
He purposefully bombed.
Yeah.
Yes, reading out of a joke book.
Yeah.
My favorite, I liked his episode of Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. His infamous quote about Bill Cosby, where he's talking about him, and Patton Oswalt was telling me, it's like, I feel like the worst thing about all this was the hypocrisy, and he's like, no, I thought it was the raping. I don't know if there's anyone out there who is like, I like raping people, and gosh darn it, I know it's not politically correct. He's like, well, that's really bad, but at least they're not being a hypocrite. That's the worst thing.
Yes.
Another great Norm Macdonald moment. It's from when he was on Saturday Night Live and Matthew Perry was the guest. Do you remember it was Matthew Perry giving sarcasm lessons? It's like he was teaching a class on being sarcastic, and like the whole thing is that Norm Macdonald's character just didn't get it, and he kept going back to. He kept saying, I want to take a bath with Marissa, who's one of the other characters. I forget what actress that was. And then, like, it's like, well, it's not really sarcasm there. It's like, oh, well, how could I be more wanting to take a bath with Marissa? I'm forgetting the details of it, but you're getting the essence of the joke. And it was like right in the height. It was in the 90s, right in the height of Chandler, of him being of Matthew Perry being Chandler. But like, Norm Macdonald stole that scene. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, that's a great one too.
Yeah.
There's just so many Norm. I mean, maybe his top tier like lovable oaf moment could be his appearance on Conan again, but when Conan was on the Tonight Show and it was his last appearance, and he brings a gift basket to Conan. And he's like, this isn't for your last show. I procrastinate. I meant to bring this months ago. And it was from when Conan got the Tonight Show. And so he's reading the card and it's like, congratulations, Conan, for securing a permanent position as host of the Tonight Show. This is something no one can take away from you. If I know you, Conan, it is that miserable failure is not something you can do. Just like the most oafy, sarcastic thing. It just perfect in Norm's character. Beautiful send off for Conan. Conan was dying. Everyone was dying. It was great. So that's why.
He also didn't pull his punches, especially with like O.J. Simpson or Bill Clinton. Like every chance he could, he'd bring it up. Yeah. Like he got kicked out. Like he was never asked to come back on The View because he kept bringing it up and they kept being like, no, stop, and then he'd like keep going on it.
Okay, manslaughter. Yeah.
I wish he was still around. Was it last year before that we lost him?
Last year, I think.
Last year, really funny guy.
Maybe like Kate Bush, we can get him to trade out places with Bill Cosby.
I don't think Kate Bush ever sang about that.
Well, she said in the song, it says, make a deal with God to switch places. That's what I was going for.
No, I know where you're going with it, but then you made it really specific.
But isn't bombing a joke and still having you laugh, isn't that the most Norm Macdonald thing I could do?
100%.
Yes, it is.
I'm going to move on. So my number 2.
Wait, is it my turn?
No, it's Matt's.
That's right, it is Matt's.
It could be, but because they're like cut of the same cloth, I still have to go with you talked about Andy Dwyer. My number 2 is a better version of Andy Dwyer. I didn't think that was possible after seeing him. I love Nick Miller. He is like my absolute favorite from New Girl. Because like, especially as you guys were talking when you're like doing like the whole secrets thing with that he's talking to Ron, is like Nick does that so many times. I'm not sure I know how to read. I think I just memorized a lot of words. Or like one time when my mom was sleeping, I snuck into her room and put a lemon in her mouth. Like, what? Where do you come up with this? He is so funny and so obtuse. I just like anytime they let him have a big scene and just let him dominate the scene and run with it, it's so funny. That one cold open when Zoe or Jessica becomes like the principal, or it's her first day or whatever, and then she's joking around with Nick's like, careful about that. I'll have to send you to the principal, young man. He's like, but I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. He starts yelling at her.
Like he wouldn't believe that the word was utmost with a T. He's like, no, it's like it's up to the most. The word is utmost.
And you add in a very hilarious side of like anger. Like his anger isn't like frightening or whatever. His anger is just so absurd. So like he's already at an absurd level, but his anger just takes it to another spot, and he does it really well.
Yeah, which I think that one of the best ones there is when Schmidt admitted to him that he had been dating both Cece and Elizabeth, and Nick was trying to process it. He's like, "What? You get one wife? What are you gonna have a bunch of wives? You get one wife."
or just like one of these cuts when it talks about like how sprint he gets, and he goes up to a door that is like it's a pole door or something, and he like pushes against it. It's not open. He's like, "I'll push if I want to push," and he just starts fighting it.
Nick wasn't on my list, but he should have been.
Yeah, he is so funny. He easily could be number one, but like the number one I have is like quintessential. So
yeah.
All right, Brian, what you got?
All right. Well, I got two that we have to talk about, but I'm just gonna save them and go with one that I guess we probably don't have, which is Coach on Cheers. So Matt, you've only seen the one episode of Cheers that I gave you, right?
Just the one. Yep.
Which that was after Coach had died, so you didn't see anything of Coach. Coach was the bartender who used to be Sam's baseball coach, and it's just he's one of those characters who's like so sweet and lovable, but he just does not get it. Like at one point they have to explain why he's not in some episodes because it's in a weird spot where the actor had died, but they had already filmed the season finale. So for a few episodes in season 3, they have to make explanations as to why he's gone. And some of the explanations they just had fun with it. Like, oh, Coach is at a family reunion. He's like, well, why is everyone black? Oh, well, they sent him the invitation by mistake, and he still goes every year. So I was like, he's taking his driver's test out of state because he heard it was easier over there. Or like he answered because everyone just calls him Coach, and he's answered the phone. He's like, do we have an Ernie Pantuso here? He's like, that's you, Coach. Oh, speaking.
Nice.
Yeah.
Brandon, were you ever a Cheers fan?
No, I mean, I watched a little bit of it on Netflix. My wife was actually watching through it, and so I caught some of it as she was watching through it. I liked what I saw, but I never got around to watching it myself.
Yeah. And then after Coach died, they brought in Woody Harrelson to kind of replace that same role. And even the first episode, they said he came in looking for Coach, and they said, oh, I'm sorry, Coach died. He's like, oh, that's too bad. We were pen pals. And he's like, oh, you guys were exchanging letters? No, we exchanged pens. Coach thought it would be more personal.
Nice.
And so, I mean, he's maybe not the most iconic today. I mean, I think I skipped over a couple of the big ones, but I think he's one of the originators of that kind of role.
Yeah, that's great. Those are funny.
All right, Brandon, number one.
All right. So my number one, I mean, I said it at the beginning, I'm a huge Office fan. So basically half the cast of The Office could be considered a lovable oaf.
True.
But I'm personally, I think it's Michael that's the lovable oaf.
I actually had Kevin on my list, but go with Michael.
I was going to say Kevin is the one I think that stands out in that.
Yeah. I think Kevin is by far the more oaf.
Yes.
But to me, I think after you watch through the show, like people on their first watch might not feel like Michael is as lovable. But like Michael, he has such a heart of gold at the end of the day. Like he acts out inappropriately so often, but he always comes back. He's always apologetic. Like he loves people so deeply. He just feels people really deeply. And so his oafiness is more of a secondary trait to his heart, but I think that's kind of exemplifies the lovable oaf traits. So just Michael Scott.
I think one of Michael's better moments with that would be he's like when Oscar's trying to explain the surplus to him. He's like, "Can you explain it to me like I'm 5?"
And then he tries to do the same to Hank, and Hank's like, "I know what a surplus is."
Yes. He has. Like the Did I Stutter episode is a great example of how he is an oaf, right? He doesn't know how to deal with Stanley talking back to him. And so he decides to, first he just, blows it off, plays it off thinking, oh yeah, he's just being friendly. And then he fake fires him, and that obviously doesn't work. And finally he, orders everybody out and just has a heart-to-heart, and it works. And then in the closing scene, we see Phyllis talk back to him, and he does the exact same thing that he did with Stanley.
Everybody up with Phyllis.
Yeah. It's like, okay, yeah. There's the oaf again.
But the heart-to-heart works because it actually is, like, when he finally is able to act like a manager, he is able to say what a manager should say. Of like, okay, you don't like me, I get that. That's fine. But you can't talk to me like that in this office. That is 100% how a manager should respond to that. Like, don't take it personally. He's just your employee. Just you can't do that here. Like, that is a great Mike. And so I do love that Michael has those moments of like, yeah, I have competency. Like when he convinces Danny and he sells Danny to come to
well, they established early on that he's a good salesman. He just should never have been promoted to manager.
True. Yes.
All right.
We're on you, Matt.
So that was you. Okay. So mine is the quintessential pick. I mean, all of you guys had thought of him. I feel like when we talk about a lovable oaf, this is the character we talk about, and that's Joey Tribbiani.
Yep.
He was like the guy that did that the best. I can't really think of anyone who has set such a precedent for lovable oaf like he does.
And he's one also where he didn't start out the show like a genius, but he's definitely got dumber throughout the years.
Absolutely.
Like season 1 Joey is a lot smarter than season 10 Joey.
Yeah, 100%. And so like that was the one where it's like, okay, he's still funny because he's been doing this character for so long. And then like he goes over to Joey and it's just like he's still as dumb, but it's like he can't carry the show. He needs all of them with him. Mm-hmm. And so he was a hard character. He was a hard sell for a spin-off show on that one. But like he still
no one remembers Joey.
Yeah.
No one remembers Joey the show. We remember Joey the character.
Exactly. Because like Matt LeBlanc just by season 2 even like he just had that character and he only got better as it went on of just knowing how is Joe going to react, how is he going to play things, and he just delivers lines in the perfect way. He does it really well.
Like, hey, I'm Chandler. Could I be wearing any more clothes?
Did you see my post this week from Jack?
Yeah.
Gosh, this kid just walks into the room wearing all of these shirts. And I'm like, what? How many shirts do you have on? All of them? Oh, okay. Well, then go change.
Okay. This is the same one of your kids that does all the Winston pranks, right?
Yeah, he does.
So basically, I feel like your son has just somehow just become the sitcom character.
This is what happens when you get dropped on your head so many times in a short amount of time. People are like, that's terrible. That's your son. Yeah, I can say it. Why? I live with it.
Well, with Joey, Matt LeBlanc, he broke his arm at one point, and to write it into the show, like, it's believable. Let's just say that Joey was jumping on the bed like a child and fell off, and that's what they wrote into the show.
Yep. Yeah, he broke it on the air. Like he broke it in an episode when it was filming.
Yeah,
that was impressive.
Mm-hmm. They kept going with that.
Yeah, and they came back and filmed the rest of the episode later.
Yeah,
his arm healed. So yeah, he's number one. There's not really like everyone that I can think of on my list, apart from like one who came before him technically, but like they all owe themselves to Joey and what he did.
Yeah. I'm glad you picked that because my number 1 and 2, I took a gamble putting Coach at 2 because I figured you would put Joey at your number 1. So that frees me up to put Eric Matthews from Boy Meets World into my number 1, which I think is the other. I mean, yeah, it's not as popular a show as Friends, but that is the other character that definitely fits.
Yeah. Will Friedle does really good with that, but it was the same thing. Once they got into college, especially, he got dumb.
Well, and also, I mean, it also is kind of sucky too that they in the college. I mean, he didn't gain a ton of weight, but he was a little bit heavier when they got in the college years. And I guess the thought was, well, he couldn't possibly be a heartthrob with love interest anymore, so we just have to make him the dumb character. And there was that episode where. The whole thing was him and Topanga.
Is that what God did when he created you, Brian?
Yes, pretty much.
I couldn't let that joke go. I couldn't let that float away. Brian's like, I don't want to do this podcast ever again.
Keep going. Yeah, anyways. There's an episode where Eric and Topanga both are going on a diet at one point, and the whole thing is like Corey thinks that Topanga's pregnant because of all the stuff. But I guess in real life, those two, Danielle Fishel and Will Friedle, were pulled into the producer's office, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to write a story about how you two have gained weight. Is that okay?"
Do I get to say no? No, you don't. Sorry.
Yeah.
I've seen a bunch of posts of how Eric changed so much, and the explanation is that it's through the eyes of Corey. So like in the first season, he's like the cool older brother. He's going on dates all the time. He's not a genius, but he's definitely not crazy. And then like as the thing is like as Corey gets older and throughout the time, they kind of find their niche with Eric, especially when they pair him up with Feeney, and they realize, okay, this guy's got some humor if we make him dumber. And it gets to the point where, and same thing, like he is the one towards the end who has all the heart without all the intelligence. Like that episode in the college years when they all get in the big fight, he's the one that brings them all together.
Yep. Yeah, that's to me quintessential Eric, is that episode or those 2 episodes and how he is during it.
Yeah.
Yep. Brian, were you a big Boy Meets World fan?
I mean, I haven't watched it since it aired. I did watch it. That was a long time ago, and I was pretty young at that point.
I've rewatched it a bunch of times, and actually now there's a new rewatch podcast with the cast of the show, because that's just the Office ladies opened up a gate, and now every show's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, get on it, Brandon.
Okay. Sorry. I didn't know that was a prerequisite for coming on this podcast.
But it's funny.
Go ahead.
One of the favorite quotes because I listened to the podcast. One of the things I found out is one of the very first seasons they were taking like promo pictures, and Eric, for some reason, everyone get together. He like put his hand on Bill Daniels, who plays Mr. Feeney, and I forget it was him or someone else said like, "Don't touch Feeney." And like, oh, so then like, and ever like for a while, I looked up a promo picture. He's like, I just kept my hands in my pockets. So I looked like cast photo, and like Eric awkwardly has his hands in his pockets because like, yep. And my thought is, yep, someone just told him don't touch Feeney.
Feeney. Oh man, Mr. Feeney is a great character. He's my favorite. So I wanted to pivot because there's still a bunch of characters we could talk about, and like we haven't named any animated characters, and I feel like animated shows do this so much. I have 3 that I could talk about. Doing like our own animated list of like who is your favorite lovable oaf out of animated form. I would put Fry from Futurama.
Yeah, Fry works.
He's not the quintessential one. Like Homer Simpson to me is the one that when you're talking about animated dopes, he's like the guy that comes to mind. But Fry to me had so much more heart because especially they let some of these episodes of Futurama have more serious side. And a lot of it had to do with like how Fry loved Leela and like the romantic side he had for Leela. So there's a lot of times that's played for laugh, but then you see those times where it's like he really cares and like the lengths he would go for her, like when she gets stabbed by those space wasps, or when this original series finale when he loses his hands or gets the robot devil hands and all that sort of stuff. That it's really great to see how much he cares, and so that's why I like him more than Homer.
Yeah, I think the other obvious answer is Patrick from SpongeBob.
Yeah, I thought would bring that up.
Yeah. I did too, and I thought someone would bring up Homer too. Yeah.
Like with Old Patrick, school? Is this the Krusty Krab? No, this is Patrick.
I am not a Krusty Krab.
Old school would go Shaggy. I like Shaggy a lot, and he definitely is the lovable oaf of the group. Scooby's a bit of an oaf too. Like they have a good partnering there, but I mean Scooby gets a pass. He's a dog, so.
And then,
but Shaggy's like you can't have Scooby Doo without Shaggy. Like if you took out Shaggy and you just had the other ones, it wouldn't work at all.
Yeah, you could also go Kel from Kenan and Kel was the dumb character as well.
Kel.
There's some episode where they're. I forget what the deal. Like they're stuck in a fence or something, and then he just like walks around. You knew you could walk around this whole time. It's one of those kind of deals.
You know who's not a lovable oaf? Freaking Urkel. I don't like him at all. Never thought he was funny.
He had his moments, but it's like they milked every bit of joke out of Urkel, and then they kept that going.
Or what's the neighbor girl from Full House?
Kimmy Gibbler.
Kimmy. Another one. She's not lovable to me. She's just an oaf.
Yeah.
You mentioned Karate Kid. Johnny Lawrence is another great honorable mention.
I was gonna say that. Yep.
Well, I said it now because
you stole it.
Barreling through these.
Yeah.
Clearly, you looked at my notes.
I did.
They're talking about putting a song on his ad. He's like, "Well, I don't think we have the rights to the song." He's like, "No, I own it. It's like decided by
I love when they go to rehab to find Robbie's mom, and the person asks Johnny, "Oh, like that's so brave of you to come in and we're supportive of you," and he's like, "What? No, I'm not checking in. I'm no quitter."
my last example I had on my list was Troy from Community.
I was going to bring up Community because I was like, does Community have a lovable oaf? And I think Troy would be it.
Yeah. Like at one point they're talking about Britt's talking about bringing her cat to the animal hospital, and he gets, and then Abed just knows like the animals are the patients.
That's a great way to do that joke. That is a really well written joke.
It's like he thinks all dogs are boys and all cats are girls. He's like, you can't just prove that. Have you ever seen a cat penis?
And that makes Troy such a good partner with Abed. Is he's got the doofiness, but he's lovable, and then Abed is very smart and he's lovable, but he's not very emotionally intelligent. So
yes,
originally they had planned on Pierce and Troy being like the best friend duo. So in the early episodes, there's some more comments of them, and that's why they're sitting together at the end. But pretty quickly on, they realize, oh no, this show is Troy and Abed.
Yeah, I don't mind like the Pierce Troy dynamic because there is some gold in that. Like, wasn't it that Troy had like the old white guy Twitter or whatever?
Yes,
that he was
old white man says.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I like some of the jokes that they had together.
Yeah, my favorite ones. Abed is dressed up as Batman. He says, "Can I ask you something only Batman would know?" Yeah, it's like, "Am I good looking?" and Troy Abed as Batman says, "You're a very attractive man. I knew it."
My favorite Troy moment, though, and this doesn't highlight his oafishness, but I just love it, is like during the second Halloween episode when it's the zombies and the Abba in the library, and like he comes in and he's gonna save the day and he's making it to the air conditioner and like fighting through, and then he starts getting bit and he's like, "Okay, all right, you got me." You got me. Like he just gets annoyed about it.
And Donald Glover just has, there are so many moments, I wish I could think of one off 10, where the line isn't particularly funny, but he delivers it so well.
No, the duel like with the paintball and from the dark side when they come over is like when they're like, "I'm counting bullets," like are you out or something like that. He's like, "Yes." Why would you tell me that? I don't know.
Or when they're teaching Jeff how to fight and Shirley walks in and Troy's like, "We were fighting." And he looks like, "I couldn't think of another word." Like that show was fine without Pierce, but it really took a hit when Troy left.
Yeah. Agreed. Any other options? Anyone else?
I'm sure there's a bunch we missed. I mean, I got all the ones that I prepared.
These are only deserving of shout outs in my opinion, but Jazz from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yeah.
I think you could say Tim the Toolman Taylor was kind of
for sure.
And shout out to Firefly, Jane Cobb. He is a lovable oaf. I got to rewatch that show. It's been a long time.
I love Jane, and he has a lot of great moments in the show. But some of my favorites are in like the movie when when they're talking about like how River gets triggered by this one phrase, and it's like at a corner, it's like, "Don't say that." Well, it only works on her, Jane. Well, now I know that. Look, do you want to run this ship? Yes. Well, you can't.
Yeah, for sure.
He's a great character.
Yeah, and I know these are movies, but I just recently watched this whole trilogy, the Ocean's trilogy. The Malloy brothers, they're hilarious.
They're a lot of fun.
Yeah.
One of them is Scott Conn, the son of James Conn, who just died last month or 2 months ago. The dad from Elf.
Yeah, and
they both had other relatives that were more famous than they were, which was funny because Casey Affleck's brother is Ben Affleck.
Yeah. And it's funny watching that movie. I saw things like this movie has like four like either Emmy winners or Oscar winners, and one of them was, I didn't realize that Casey Affleck had won an Oscar.
Yep.
And we're like, this guy out of this cast, this is the one who won an Oscar.
Yep, he won from Manchester by the Sea. Well, now that's interesting. Okay, if it would have 4 Oscar winners, then it's definitely Clooney has won. Casey has won. Brad Pitt has won. Matt Damon has won. I don't know if Matt Damon has won for acting, though, because he definitely won for writing for Good Will Hunting, but I don't think he's won yet.
Did Andy Garcia, or I think Don Cheadle won? Didn't he win one for something?
No, he was nominated for Hotel Rwanda, but I don't think he won. I'm pretty sure he didn't. Andy Garcia, I don't think he's won. I know he's been nominated, but I don't think he's won.
Though that's a
Julia Roberts has won, though, I think.
Yeah.
Didn't she? I think she won for Aaron Brockovich.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds about right.
I love Oscars. I love Oscar trivia, so that's me. All right, and moving into trivia. We reached like the episode was moving along just fine, and then all of a sudden it like stalled out here. So, all right,
we started the episode talking about a movie that most of our audience hasn't even heard of.
That's true. Yeah, so we've been all over here. All right, so last week we talked about Obi-Wan Kenobi. We had our bud Jeff on here who was talking about who had the trivia, and he asked that Obi-Wan's droid in Attack of the Clones, what was Obi-Wan's droid's name?
R4.
And R4 P17.
Oh,
got it. I mean, yeah, like I would accept R4 as the answer because I didn't even know that. He texted or messaged me afterwards, and he's like, full name R4 P17. I'm like, if I had 100 guesses, still wouldn't have landed on that. So,
and I'm the least Star Wars fan of the three of us, and I knew it was R4.
I knew it was R4. Look at me flexing about my Star Wars knowledge. All right, well, Brandon, you've got a trivia for this week. What do you got?
I do have trivia. So it is actually about Kramer. And earlier, Matt, you mentioned one of the odd jobs that Kramer works. And so this question is on that same subject. So Kramer's never had a real job, but he's often had side hustles. And so what side hustle did Kramer use to make money at a police station?
I'm not a pimp.
I also have a bonus trivia question for anyone that's interested. I saw this one. I did not know the answer, so I thought this was pretty deep cut. In the pilot episode, Jerry calls Kramer by a name that's not Kramer. What name did Kramer get called by Jerry? That was later retconned. And in season 9, they explained it by saying that it was the name that was put on the door buzzer for Kramer's apartment, and that's why in that pilot episode he had a different name, is how they explained it later. So what's Kramer's misspelled buzzer name?
I remember a couple years ago we were watching from the beginning, and we only ended up making like a season and a half, but I was like, hey, that's the wrong name.
Yeah.
So they also replaced Jerry's parents too. Like he had different actors as parents in like the first time we saw them, and then
I thought it was just his dad. Was his mom too?
I think it was both.
No, I think it was just his dad.
Oh, was it?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
And Newman, we hear Newman before we see Newman, and in the episode where we hear him, he's like on the roof shouting that he's gonna jump, and Kramer's just telling him, "Well, do it already." But the voice is Larry David. shouting from the roof, and it's like very obviously Larry David.
Well, Larry David is a very obvious person.
Yeah.
But it's very different from Wayne Knight.
Yes, that's true. Fair point, Newman.
Before Seinfeld, I knew Wayne Knight from Third Rock from the Sun and Space Jam.
Yeah, I knew him from Space Jam and Jurassic Park. Yeah,
I watched Jurassic Park a little bit later because I was 5 when that movie came out.
I was 5 when I watched it.
That's fair.
I believe I watched it for the first time at Wilbur's house.
Yeah. I found it funny. Like, there's people who aren't like big movie snobs that I was talking to, or like I was talking about like how Jurassic Park is by far the best of all the Jurassic movies because
absolutely.
I mean, like, it's not even close. And then someone was just like, yeah, I suppose it's a little bit better. I'm like, dude, it's like a perfect script. It is so well written. It is so smart. It is so well shot. And for you to be like, yeah, it's a little better than Jurassic Park 3 or whatever. I don't.
Jurassic Park 3 was trash.
I've come around to Jurassic Park 3. It's not terrible, but it definitely for me, Jurassic Park 3 ending with him making the call and then the son picking up from Ellie Sattler and him only hearing like the dinosaur man, quote unquote, and the dinosaur roaring there. And that's the only information they have to go off. And Ellie Sattler was able to motivate the entire Coast Guard and the Navy to come to this island and breach international waters and federal trade and all this sort of stuff. And like, the permission that she was able to get based off of her son overhearing a dinosaur on the phone. That is the biggest stretch of the imagination to me. It's like, you have all of this proof of other stuff and the government's still like, well, let's think about this for 9 years.
That's even worse.
24 hours.
That's even worse than I told Matt, I like the movie Signs, but my problem with that movie at the end is the guy needed a supernatural sign to think of, hit it with a bat.
And the water. Maybe if I hit it really hard, something good will happen. Let me try it.
So let us know if you know the answers to the to our trivia questions.
To the Signs trivia.
Yeah.
Thanks for getting us back on track, Brian.
Yeah. So it was what did Kramer do at the police station to make money, and what was Kramer's original misspelled name or pronounced name? Yeah.
Frank. Okay. All right. Well, hey, thanks so much to our special guest. We'll definitely have to have him back on. Maybe for an office related. You said for like the litmus test for getting into our podcast, it's you have to like The Office. I mean, I don't think we've had any guest that doesn't like The Office.
We've had one.
Oh my gosh.
Who was it? I want names.
It was actually it was my son, actually.
Oh. Yeah, no, sorry, Charlie. You're done. You're out. But until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
I'm Brandon.
And we're reminding you to stay tuned and keep watching.